Hello, my friends. Lovely to see you. Always a pleasure. Well, allow me to bring in the guests for this writer's showcase. Should be fun. First off, welcome our resident Bardy chap.
我が力、我が刃、我が狂気、我が狂気をもて見解せよ。エクスはあ、うがせエクスプロージョン。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Don. Always a pleasure to be here.
Alrighty. Now to find entrances that suit our the guests. I haven't gotten theirs yet. Well, this one works fine.
Do you now?
That was an interesting pick, to say the very least.
Hello.
Hey. Let me see. I got another placeholder here somewhere. This will do fine.
I haven't seen that one before.
I have seen that clip many a time, and I am completely fine with being a fucking space cowboy.
Yep. Well,
And in Star Wars,
you didn't get to read last week. Last week was kind of a weird mess. Totally my fault. Totally my fault. But hopefully the new process will streamline things.
Well, I do actually have a suggestion for my intro next time. Let's see, there was a CGI cinematic trailer that Games Workshop dropped for Warhammer 40,000, specifically 9th edition. They just had Sister of Battle gunning down some Necrons and walking in through the smog and smoke, and I was like, that would be a pretty cool intro, and it's thematically consistent. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna just suggest using the one you used last time. The one where it's just like, we're all gonna die, so do whatever.
Ow! I feel personally attacked right now.
Is that that's attack or something?
Well, I think that has more to do with you.
I think it's also the irony in this is that that's the queen of my fucking fandom, apparently.
Well, you do know that cliche of anytime a girl teases you, she wants to jump your bone, right?
Well, I mean, I am the bard, therefore, by default, I'm the most charming one here.
Well, he's not wrong.
Oh, he is.
Oh, I see.
Aw, see, I told you. Oh my!
You
Yeah.
have experience. It's unfair.
Is that the first official ship of the writing showcase?
Perhaps.
Really? I'm surprised no one shipped Commander Dunn in Neph.
I'm kind of surprised that too, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been free from shipping mostly because Wolf is so dramatic out his ardor being known.
He must defend his lady's honor.
Yeah. So in any case, we were just kind of buddies, and then like Wolf is just like, "Marry me, Neph."
He's simping. He's simping.
Alrighty. Well, Count Balerion is in the back room, so come on in.
Greetings.
Hey,
Hello.
Balerion.
Hello.
Greetings. So
That
we're
was-
shipping?
That was a long intro, I think.
That was nowhere near as long as some of the other ones.
Mhm,
Fair enough.
Yeah, at least it was to the point.
mhm, mhm.
Let's see.
The fact that's Game of Thrones, so it's just like, you must have really liked that scene when it first came out.
No, they're not. As far as I am aware, no, because they're on opposite sides of the country.
So far as I know, Neph is more platonic about it than Wolf is. Not that's my
Yeah.
business, mind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, it's
Not-
it's mostly a joke.
Oh, come on, though. Office relationships are one of the most interesting pieces of gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And drama.
That too.
Yes. The
All right.
others.
Alrighty. Well, we'll go in a circle. Tarek, so how do we want to... So anybody have time constraints first?
Well, in an hour, I'm going off AFK-ish, the way I usually do.
Okay, so why don't we just do counterclockwise? Guys, and just do Balerion, Ryder, Wizia, Tarek, and then me.
All right.
All right.
Sounds fair.
All right.
Okay. Half a second. I have to get to my screen. Back by popular demand. Bozo. Where the blazes is my cursor? Okay, there it is. Back by popular demand. Here we are. Chapter 10. This part is scary. A mummy opened the door. Did someone call? It inquired. We're in for it now, whined Bombador. Grr, said the mummy. Bozo threw a couple of elf-stony things at it. Boo-hoo, said the mummy. I'm telling. They went inside and were instantly attacked by hordes of mummies. These guys weren't playing around either. They meant business. They had been kept there by some magic hoodoo thingy in order to protect Sauron's diary from the throngs of people who would otherwise have got hold of it and used it for evil purposes, such as basing appallingly bad television shows on it. The mummies attacked viciously. Anderson screamed. Fred fainted. Bozo forgot to say anything sarcastic. Abracadabra, said the druid. The monsters paused. Wolfalon pulled a rabbit out of a hat. The monsters fled in terror. The druid collapsed, but no one paid much attention, as they were more concerned with the giant clam that kept opening and shutting its mouth. It was in the middle of the room. It was scary. Within its maw, they saw a book. This was the last and most terrible guardian of Sauron's diary. Bummer, said Fred. Use your sword, silly, said Bozo. This is the bit where you redeem yourself. Huh, said Fred. I did what you said last time and it didn't work. You don't get it, do you? Snapped Bozo. Just do it already. Fine, said Fred, but I'll haunt you if I die. Yeah, right, grunted Bozo. Fred attacked the clam and killed it. Bozo lifted the book and removed it from the monster's maw. I love the illustrations, said Fred. Now it's my turn to do something stupid and redeem myself, said Bozo. Hey, bad guys, come and get us. Bombador growled. What purpose do you two serve anyway? We're the protagonists, retorted Bozo. Deal with it. A bunch of nasties attacked. Boo, they said. Eek, said everyone. Whatever, said Bozo, tossing some elfstone thingummies at the monsters. Yikes, said the monsters and ran away. Whoa, way cool, said everyone. Half a second. Just grabbing some water. And now, chapter 11. Of course, he isn't actually dead. Boo-hoo, wept Anison, the elven warrior. Wolfalon is dead. He was such a nice guy. You're right, said Bombador. Stuck-up jerk. Shut up, both of you, said Excedrin, the elven war maiden with improbable upper extremities. Don't worry, he isn't really dead, said Bozo. They never are. Especially if we can take him to the gnome healers, the famous Horfats, said Excedrin. No relation to Tolkien's Harfoots, I'm sure, said Bozo sarcastically. Any resemblance to Tolkien in this story is strictly coincidental. You're right. As if. No way. His smile was hard and bitter. Excedrin led them to the Horfats' healing place. They could have taken an ambulance, but decided walking would be quicker. As it probably was, even though they got attacked by giant plants on the way and almost torn limb from limb. The usual crud, as Bozo observed while hacking his way out of the digestive system of an enormous dandelion. We just have to check his insurance, said the Horfats. Okay, they said a few hours later. We'll treat the druid because he has insurance. The rest of you will have to go to the emergency room and wait 5 hours before anyone will look at you. You can't be held liable in case of death. Hospitals stink, said Bozo. Chapter 12 is coming up. Chapter 12. They split up. Time to split up, said the druid after he'd recovered. As few people should go to the Northern Death Kingdom, or Eek Kingdom, or whatever it's called, as possible. Most of the rest of us are going to Traskadat to fight the trolls and whatnot. Bozo has to take Sauron's diary and kill the bad guy with it. Works for me. The dumbest plan is always the right one, said Bozo. My only consolation is that we're not in a Conan the Barbarian story. Whatever, said Druid. Who's going with you? I am, said Lovelinda. I may be utterly useless from a military point of view, but I love Bozo. Okay, get out of my face, said Wolfalon. Time for tearful separation. Boo-hoo and all that, said Bozo. We'll meet again, of course, Freddo. You'll get to swashbuckle a bit, which is all you're really good at anyway. I just hope you're less of a smart aleck, said Fred. The wisecracks are getting old. Ho ho. I used to think he was funny, but the joke got stale, said Bluff. You're an expendable, you know, sneered Bozo. Bozo and Lovelinda began their long and harrowing journey to the scary place. On the way, they adopted a cute but sinister hedgehog named Sonic. Let's see. Maybe one more chapter. Chapter 13. A couple of extras die. A boring chapter. When they arrived at Traskadat, the Druid, Anison, Excedrin, Bombador, Bluff, and Fred saw enormous globs of troll troops massed at the border. They were big and tall and ugly, and their existence was one long bad hair day. Kill off the bleeps, said Bombador. Ho, 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 said Bluff. He said, bleeps. Gazing at the troops, Fred realized that his life had been irrevocably changed. The companions immediately got into some hardcore military preparations. Bluff, though jolly, was a brilliant military commander. He engaged in a lot of boring strategic thought about troops and flanks and vulnerable points and whatnot. He was like von Clausewitz after a bad laughing gas attack. Excedrin of the fake bosom was another sort. Her perfect instincts and flawless saber hand made her a lean, mean fighting machine. These two took charge of the defense. Pardon me, the Bombador. Pardon me. Bombador did his best to run things or ruin them. He was mostly a jerk. Anderson was a wimp. Fred was a non-entity, but would eventually save the day. In fact, let's skip over the boring military stuff to the bit where he and the druid infiltrate the troll camp, disguised with dark glasses. A nasty had the druid cornered and was coming closer and closer and closer. "Boo!" it said in a grum voice. "Buzz off," said Wolfalon. "Make me," said the nasty. Then Fred drew his sword and killed it. "That was the chief of the flying monkeys," said the druid. "This makes you a hero." "Cool," said Fred. But the worst was yet to come. Those trolls just kept coming and coming. They were massacring people right, left, and center, and taking out people's hit points like there was no tomorrow in hell. The background music got really sinister. Then Wolfalon unleashed his magic. It poured out uncontrollably like never mind what, rending through the hosts of trolls and burning them like marshmallows on a 4th of July barbecue. It flooded forth and it devoured all within its path, like a hungry guinea pig, belching loudly as it went. It turned a somersault and danced a jig. It started singing O Sole Mio, but the druid told it to shut up. Meanwhile, Fred was getting to know Wilma, the boldest of Traskadad's spies. Despite her housewifely appearance, the two made out passionately and all that, or rather they didn't, officially at least. When the battle was over, Anderson and Bombador were dead. "Ho, ho, ho," said Bluff. "I turned out not to be expendable after all. Ho, ho, ho. I bet Bozo ends up dying instead." "Shut up," said Wolfalon. And I think that will do for now.
I love it.
I have literally no way to criticize or help or assist whenever you read, because every time I feel like I'm waking up from a fever dream.
Well, at least this one has a plot. Sort of.
A very flaccid plot, but a plot nonetheless. But
it's a plot in as so far as, well, something happens. It's incomprehensible, but something happened.
I'm gonna put it like this. I was holding in a laugh the whole entire time because I was thinking, no, this don't laugh. That'd be rude and disrespectful. But it's like, wait, this has to be a comedy, right?
No, it's definitely serious.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Don't you
I was like, no, this is definitely a comedy, and it's a very good one.
How dare you insult Balerion like this? His work is very serious shit.
Is this like a trend where Balerion reads incoherent stories?
Not always. Not always. Sometimes I read serious ones, and sometimes I read not serious ones. This was one of the serious ones.
But 9 times out of 10, I'm generally traumatized.
Well, then I accomplished something.
Okay, well, if it was not supposed to be a comedy...
It accomplished pissing people off, so I'm not sure that should be the goal.
Okay, let's not go over there. But yeah, I was thinking, is like, this this is a comedy. I was thinking it has to be a comedy somewhere in the middle of that, but at the same time I didn't want to say anything because I felt like it would be rude. If it's not a comedy, I'm sorry, everyone. If it is, well, it's good. So
it's a comedy. I was just keeping it serious. Did you hear that? Because I don't know what my mic is picking up and what it isn't.
I think I heard that.
I think everybody heard that.
Yeah. Also, I'm in the worst position to be criticizing, considering whatever. But
No, you can say whatever you like.
I mean, I just prefer to live by the phrase, "Be careful of throwing stones when you live in a glass house."
Yeah.
Well, if you learn how to throw rocks well, you might be able to learn how to place them to cover your house.
True.
That was a
Or just
bad
open
analogy, but I'm trying something.
Or
Yes.
just open some windows.
didn't
Or just
try-
open some windows.
Yeah, you did indeed try something aspiring.
I tried something, I failed at something, and that's the entire point. This is a 4D chess move, see?
You see, failure is the greatest teacher. So therefore, even though I messed up horribly, it doesn't matter because it's actually secretly good and genius.
Mhm.
And you came
Yes.
back too. So
Checkmate,
good for you.
atheists.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, alrighty, Mr. Aspiring Writer, you are up.
Yes, alright. She woke up with something bright shining in her eyes, blinding her. Lifting her hand to block the light, she pushed herself up, groaning from the effort. Her head felt heavy as she lifted herself, her vision blurring from the effort, and she could feel the blood pumping to her skull. She was resting on something soft, oddly. Normally she slept on the stone ground of the buildings and the outpost. Resting her head back against the wall, her vision started to clear, and she could now make out her new surroundings. She was in a room with light gray walls, a rack of white coats, similar to the one Will wore, and near the entrance, a monitor next to her. There were several sensors attached to her arm and chest, and her eyes trailed up to see they were connected to the monitor. Leaning forward a bit, she could see the readings on the screen. Looking down, she saw she was still in the grimy, dust-covered clothes from before. She tried to recall what happened to her after she got on the ship. She remembered starting to cry at the blond man's words, Jeffries, and then suddenly devolved into a coughing fit. There was blood, and everyone started to panic. The man who saved her, Will, yelled at someone to get something, injected her in the arm, and then nothing. The door opened, and she tensed as the dirty blonde human, Nick, came in. His eyes widened as he saw her, and he yelled for Will. Nick started walking over to her, and she started panicking, scrambling away from him. Wait, how do I know his name is Nick? I never heard his name before. He began rummaging in a drawer beneath the monitor, looking for something, when Will rushed in. She started to scramble away from him too, but he grabbed her arm and told her to calm down. Despite every instinct screaming at her to run away, she let herself. Though still tense, she felt a slight pain on her arm and turned to see Nick removing a needle. What did he just put in me? Her vision started to go black, and she fell into unconsciousness. When she next woke up, the pain in her head was gone. That was strange, she thought. They had been surprised by her, but what did she do to surprise them? She got up, careful not to tug on the sensors attached to her, and looked around the room. It was small, barely enough to fit the bed and the monitor, and besides the coats, there wasn't much else of interest. She glanced at the monitor and saw there was something new on the screen. Instead of just the sensor readings, there was a page of notes of what she assumed was about her. Name, unknown, sex, female, age, 15 standard years, biology, human, report, has well-developed musculature, likely from the labor she was forced to endure. Shorter than average height, possibly due to Wasin's higher gravity. No sign of injuries, disease, or malnutrition. Lungs appear to be damaged from the Wasin atmosphere. The severity of the damage requires further diagnosis. Appears to be at least a part Mindtos, evidenced by an understanding of standard language. Any further host abilities will require further DNA testing. Fertility test still pending. DNA test shows she has significant portions of both Maquis and Philly's DNA, though her biology appears completely human. She jumped as the door to her room opened up, and Will stepped inside, reading something on a tablet. He looked up and frowned. You should still be unconscious. She blushed. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything as he came closer. Unlike Nick, he didn't seem panicked by finding her awake. She noted that he was already wearing a white coat when he entered, not needing one. Why did he need glasses? He glanced at the screen, seeing what she was reading. You can read this? She nodded. Do you know what the language is called? Her expression went blank. She had no idea. How does one not know what language they were reading? Will gave her a small smile. That's okay. It's called standard. You seem better than you were before. He turned to the monitor and brought up her sensor readings. Correction. You are definitely better than you were before. You've healed in a few days, which should have taken you at least several weeks. He turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. Maybe it isn't as much of a miracle that you survived what's in as I first presumed. Before she could ask what he meant, the door opened to let Nick in. What's she doing up again? Calm down, I found her already up when I walked in. Then get her on the bed while I find another dose. No need. She's already recovered from the most critical injuries. She's in no danger of dying anymore. Nick's brow furrowed. Impossible. She was... He cut short as Will pointed to her sensor readings. She'll still need tending to, but she's well out of the danger zone, Will assured him. But how? Have the host DNA results come back? Will shook his head, his expression distant. No, Vanisher's guys are still working out what we sent, but we should have the general results soon, and a more detailed report after. But do you think she might be... He went silent mid-question, blushing. Don't worry, that was my first assumption too, Will assured him. He started to move her back onto the bed, treating her cautiously, like they were afraid she would break. No, they're afraid of spooking me, like they had earlier. They started conversing in hushed tones, keeping an eye on her. Nick exited, leaving Will and her alone. Well, you certainly caught our attention, Will remarked. Not often we find a host from a sin, much less a double host. Her brow furrowed. Host? She rasped, her throat burning as she spoke. Looked like they were right about her not having healed completely. It's what we call those with certain abilities. We started to suspect you were one when you understood what Jeff was saying, and your quick recovery makes me suspect you're a double host, meaning you'll have access to even more abilities. What kind of abilities? Will smirked, reaching for her head and then pausing, probably remembering her hair was covered in dust. We'll have someone explain it to you, assuming you don't end up learning it in your sleep. That's likely when you start reading our minds for information. She tapped her eyes. What's with the glasses? Will's eyebrows raised in surprise. Ah, you know what these are? That's good. What do you know about them? You weren't wearing them before. Why now? She wondered if she should have been asking more questions about her situation and about what was going to happen to her. She hoped that this ship would bring her freedom, but she was starting to suspect it wasn't entirely the case. But something told her that if she asked, it wouldn't give her an answer. Will might, but she didn't know about the others, and she was afraid if she started asking, they might get tight-lipped. She'd ask when she was sure Will would be alone, and not afraid of Nick coming back at any moment. Will sat back in his seat. I prefer them. I have lenses if I ever have to go out onto the field, but these are more comfortable when I'm inside. Besides, he took off the glasses. I think I look better with them than without, don't you think? He gave her an awkward smile, and she got the feeling he wasn't really sure how to talk to her. And while she didn't have an opinion on which was better, she did notice that his nose was no longer bent. She could have sworn it had been when she first saw him. The door opened to let in Jeffrey, with Nick right behind him, and her breath stopped. It wasn't until she realized how large Jeffrey was, for a human. Compared to the Borons, who were twice his height, he wasn't that impressive, but standing next to the others, he was an imposing figure. He was nearly a head taller than both Nick and Will, and his chest was almost bulging under his shirt, and the armband on his left arm, she had noticed that they were all wearing one, was stretched out tight. He smiled at her, though it felt fake, just a show he had to put on for her sake. Hello there. Heard a bit about you. What's your name? She blinked, and her voice cracked as she answered. I don't know. I don't really know if I've ever had one. Jeffrey pursed his lips. That's okay. We had suspected that might be the case. He looked pointedly at... We'll try and give you one later. How much do you remember of your time on Wasin? What's Wasin? It felt odd talking. She spoke slower than they did, choosing each word with great care, using them for the first time. Judging from their reactions, this wasn't abnormal, but that didn't make her feel better when they spoke with such ease. Wasin was the place you were before, specifically Wasin 2. It's a planet. Do you know what a planet is? She searched her mind and found herself nodding. She hadn't realized it earlier. She was still trying to get her bearings on her new situation, but a lot of the holes in her mind had been filled during her time unconscious. Will did mention that was when I was absorbing knowledge earlier, that I absorb it when I'm asleep. Is that why whenever I slept, the trance always took back control? The three seemed to like that answer. Good. That's good. Maybe it won't be as difficult to educate you as I feared. So how much do you remember? She clenched her fists, looking away. I'd rather not. Be sure, Geoffrey asked, his eyes somewhat unnerving. She felt like some prized trophy that he was craving to hold. She started to answer, but froze. Her eyes went wide as a familiar sensation returned to her mind. She could feel the trance again. It was weaker, but she could feel it, trying to penetrate her mind, change how she thought. She screamed and jumped off the bed. The sensors attached to her were ripped off from her sudden movement, and she dashed for the exit. Gotta get out! Gotta get out! Have to escape! However, despite what Will had said about her miracle recovery, she did not feel healed. Her entire body ached with pain, and her legs and ribs cramped up, causing her to stumble. Nick grabbed her shoulders and tried to force her back onto the bed. She felt the trance get stronger, and she started struggling against Nick, throwing herself against him in a frenzy. She heard Will yell at something in the background, and the trance went away. She calmed down, letting Nick push her back onto the bed. Will brought out a white cloth and gloves and started to clean her arm. Her eyes widened as she saw her arm bleeding heavily. In her panic, she hadn't realized that when she ripped the sensors off, some of them have ripped her arm open. She hadn't even felt it. Seeing the blood, she finally started to feel the throbbing in her arm. There was nothing worse than what she had already had to endure before. Will glared at Geoffrey. Maybe you should leave. We can get your report by tomorrow. Geoffrey pressed his lips together, nodding. He looked embarrassed, his face bright red. Don't let her out of its room until I get that report, he said before leaving. Will watched as Geoffrey left, his nostrils flared. He then continued cleaning her wound. Nick stood for a moment, looking dumbfounded. Did you just tell Geoffrey to get out? He knows what he did, Will growled. Damn fool. Do me a favor and get her some ration cubes and water while I get these sensors back on. Nick nodded and left. Will started attaching the sensors back onto the arms, the ones that hadn't ripped something off. As he worked, she started to feel uncomfortable. After so long of not being able to talk to anyone, she found herself needing to fill the silence. Sorry, she mumbled. Will looked up in surprise. What for? For ripping the sensors off. Will chuckled, shaking his head. It's not your fault. Jeff should know better than to use empathy on someone from Wasin. Just try not to do anything sudden again, alright? She nodded. Will went back to working on the sensors, checking the monitor to see if they were attached correctly. She checked the spot where Will had cleaned her wound. The skin around it was free of grime, revealing her tan skin. She looked up, planning to ask if she could take a shower, a concept she just realized she knew. Instead, what came out was, who am I? Will paused. That's not really a question I can answer, he said slowly. You're you. What that means is up to you. But why was I there? Who put me there? Who is my family? Who was I supposed to be? Will started to shift uncomfortably in his seat. Look, I get you're confused, but you have to understand, we have no idea who you are. You've only been here for a few days. You need to give us time to find answers. She took a deep breath, trying her best not to start coughing. If it took Nick as long as to come back as when he got Jeffrey, she should still have a few minutes. Best to happen to me now. I don't know. Will I have a choice in what I do from now? Will didn't answer for a moment. I don't know. Clenching her fist underneath the covers, she nodded. That was about what she had expected, but she had been so close. She escaped from that place after being trapped there for all her life, only to end up with a group that seemed to have their own plans for her. She couldn't go back to that. Something cracked, and she jumped. Will shot up, looking around. He opened a drawer and found several of the vials, containing what she assumed were medical drugs, broken. Will looked pointedly at her, and she blushed despite herself. What had she done? Before Will could say anything, Nick entered with a box and a container. He looked at the drugs in Will's hands, the ones that were still intact, which were soaked in the chemicals. What happened? Will put the vials on the ground and took out a cloth, trying to clean the flooded drawer. Reconsidering your earlier suggestion to drug her. Give her the food while I handle this. We'll put her unconscious afterwards. Nick handed her the box and water. She opened the box and took out what had they called it? Ration cube. It was a brownish red color, and when she smelled it, she immediately recognized it as meat, though it was dried. She recalled her first break from the trance. The Borons and the people she was forced to eat, the way a Boron would rip apart the person they ate, and her stomach churned. She leaned to the side and nearly hurled, throwing the box of ration cubes aside. Thankfully, there wasn't much in her stomach to throw up, and she was able to swallow it, her throat burning even more than before. She lifted herself shakily, grabbing the side of the bed. Turning to Will and Nick, she flushed as he stared at her, wide-eyed. Nick knelt down and pulled the ration cubes back into the box while Will gave her the container, which had water in it. She drank it, feeling relieved as it suited her throat. Nick left with the box and brought back a different one. This one had ration bars rather than cubes, which they assured her were made out of something else that wasn't meat, though they didn't say what. The ration bars were a greenish color, and they didn't smell like meat, so she ate them. She finished them quickly, feeling embarrassed. She waited for Nick or Will to ask about her sudden reaction. Surprisingly, they didn't. When she was done, they asked if they could inject another dose and put her out for a few hours, to which she noddingly agreed, feeling exhausted despite only lying down. Nick grabbed her arm to inject her, and she grabbed Will's coat. She didn't trust Nick. Not yet. Will turned her, a confused look on his face which slowly turned into understanding. He put his hand on Nick's shoulder. I'll do it. You go check on the Borons. Nick nodded, handing Will the syringe as he left. Will put the needle on her arm to inject her, and she let him. Her vision began to go dark and she sighed, for once relieved to be asleep. That is it.
This is a sci-fi thing, right?
It is sci-fi fantasy, yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Intriguing.
All right.
Yes, thoughts, concerns, comments, critiques.
I'm
not gonna lie.
I'm gonna do what I've been doing to you two last time and be brutally honest because this is how you learn. Okay. Aspiring. I agree with Becca. You did have a good pacing. A lot of, you had a good flow going. But for God's sake, and I know this is maybe your second or third time doing this, but insert some passion. What I mean by that is you sounded like you were reading a book report rather than something you put your heart and soul into. And again, I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm just saying, like, if you really want to draw people into your story, you got to insert that passion.
I know it's a
learning curve. I admit it's a learning curve, but I'm just telling you for your benefit.
Yes, I am aware. I tried to change the voices here and there, but
even when you're reading exposition and the non-dialogue stuff, you gotta put the passion in. it makes the story so much more alive when you do that. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie. I did kind of feel like you could have been a little more passionate about it, because you sounded a little bored reading your own stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with what Blue is saying. Acting is an entirely different skill set, but the idea is that you're not acting in this. The idea is that you want people to feel your excitement. You should be ecstatic to be reading it. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, not having that high energy if it's not needed, but at the same time keeping that thing of mystique or intrigue is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I totally got it.
Not
This
trying
is-
to bully you. Again, I'm trying to be honest.
I did not expect to be good at this at the second time.
No, I didn't either. I'm just saying. Like, I'll let you know when you get there. I'm sure everybody will, but I'm just saying for your benefit again.
Oh yeah, sure. But it's good to be reminded. You always need someone to tell you when you're being an idiot.
the first time I read, I had to practice reading out loud for like the week before. I practiced reading aloud, so I don't know if that would help or not. Not necessarily the whole week, but maybe practicing a bit in advance helps.
Well, I do sometimes practice a bit in advance. Like I'll go onto another Discord call and read to people who've read my shit before.
And this this advice to you, and to be fair, when Balerion reads, I the kind of energy I get from him is the meth addict at the corner of the street.
Say that again. You were laughing so loud I couldn't.
Sorry. What I said was, when you read your stuff, you do it with passion, but you do it with the same passion as the meth addict at the corner of my street.
Oh my God.
Balerion is a meth addict, confirmed.
Coke, meth, crack, he's on something.
I beg your pardon. No, all natural weirdness. No artificial ingredients here.
Can I bottle that and sell it to the guy on the street?
It'll cost you.
Deal.
No,
We'll work it out
Derek,
later.
you'll get it. He is the guy on the street.
Yeah, you keep forgetting that he's the meth addict on the street, dude. Of course he's the guy. Yeah.
Anytime you see a meth addict on the street, it is him.
Yes.
All right, so I think we're on to the next guy, though.
Well,
Yep.
what, did you say is there anything about the writing? I know my reading will always need work on, but the writing part is like anything I must fix.
I tried to concentrate on it, but like the only thing that I could kind of like notice was like I'm missing some descriptions of like how this place looks. That's the main thing that I noticed.
Oh yeah.
I thought I described that at the front.
Well, kind of the thing is, it's not just at the front. You
got to keep reminding them.
kind of that free time because kind of like you kind of think of it like a scene in a movie. Like there's an establishing shot first, but then sometimes people will like look around at their surroundings, and like we get to see what things look like, and you got to do that for your book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually something that I've been adopting recently.
But I thought I did do that. Like she takes a look at her surroundings.
Yeah, I trust me, aspiring. Sometimes I get that sort of feedback as well. Just go back.
I'm just confused. What did I not do?
Yeah. Well, it's basically like I think it was partially like you described it up front, but I kind of forgotten what it looked like by the end of the reading.
Yeah, I have to agree with Dunn on this. Like, this is what I mean. Like, specifically because you're reading it. If Dunn was reading it himself, I'm sure it would stick more. But once you read for like 20 minutes, and this isn't on you, this is just a matter of the human attention span, you're gonna forget some details. So
you first.
So my suggestion to you about that is if you feel like people are going to forget, like if you feel like they're going to forget a detail, just try and remind them subtly, if you get what I mean. Like mention the color of the drapes or something if you feel, even if you already did it.
Okay, so just like try and trickle them in here and there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
sort
pretty
of
much
like reinforcing the scenery so that way the audience doesn't forget.
Oh, let me call attention to the chat here. Descriptions work better if they're moving with the story a lot of the time too. If you weave it a bit more into action, it's a bit more memorable.
Well put, Becca.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very well put.
I'm going to listen. I'm going to try to pay attention to that myself in writing.
It is a little bit easier when you're writing something in the modern world, because you kind of like can give like a lot, like you don't really need to, like, unless it's out of the ordinary, you don't need to describe it. Like a press conference is just a press conference. You can just kind of like get some ideas of like what the press conference looks like just by virtue of it being a press conference.
Right.
But I'm making a sci-fi world and certain things. Like, what the hell does his medical bay look like?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky with me too because my serious novel it's located in a different culture from ours, so everything is going to look different. The buildings are going to be different shape and all this. So how do I do that? How do I keep people aware of that at the same time, integrating it in the story? And that's something I'm still working on, kind of.
Yeah, I actually do get some ideas on how to fix that. Anything about the character?
Character seemed fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we're only in chapter 2, right? So there's not enough really to go off of yet.
Yeah, the reason I asked that because the knowledge thing is a very I basically decide what she does and does not know. It is very arbitrary.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
That's fair enough. It's intriguing how they're relating and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like why she forgot about stuff.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah,
because that will draw the reader in.
I would have assumed that it was a side effect of being put under mind control for so long that one loses their sense of self and individuality, and linked to that is their memories.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yes. It is related. Not solely how you're thinking.
Yeah.
All right.
Fair enough.
Cool. So, anyways, Wissia, it is your turn.
All right. So a brief recap in case anybody forgot. It is now 4016. Rosa woke up from cryostasis and finds herself in the company of a strange man who, well, actually not a strange man, a complete old douchebag who mistreats her. And eventually she gets an opportunity to escape when a group of strangers come in to arrest him. The group of strangers is led by a captain by the name of Malik, who invites Wissia to come along with him to wherever it is he's going. Wissia, concluding that anywhere's, well, better than where she currently was and not in the company of that asshole, decided to follow along with him. All right, now we are on to Chapter 2, The Chancellor. With a twinkling twilight sky as their canopy, Wissia and Malik approached the silver-plated shuttle, its backside lowered to act as a ramp for them to climb on board. She was mere inches away when her body stiffened. She felt a tug in her stomach, like a harpoon pulling her back. Her eyes drooped to her feet, unwilling to take the next step as an idea crept into her head. Hold on. Why do I feel like I shouldn't go? Like I need to be taking care of something. Her eyebrows closed together as her forehead crinkled. That woman, she remembered, seeing Maria's body suspended in the stasis pod. There's something about her. I need to... Wissia? Malik's voice crashed her train of thought. Are you all right? Wissia lifted her head, seeing the slight frown on his face. Yeah, I'm fine. I just, don't feel right about going. Wissia's shoulders slouched. With a slight grin, Malika reassured her. Don't worry. If you have any second thoughts, we'll be fine providing transport back here. Wissia raised an eyebrow. With a light shrug, she stepped on board. Whatever. I shouldn't second guess myself. Not now. Anyway, let's go. She walked up to Malik. At the door, Lucia watched the ramp sealed shut behind her. There was no turning back. The bathroom doors slid open, with Sia exiting dressed in a black sports bra and pants. The interior of the craft was bright and silvery, as well as long and narrow. She turned the corner and walked down the hall, spying Malik sitting on the other side of the walkway and a pair of armed guards at the door ahead. He was concerned from what she could tell, and was staring at a small holographic tablet. She took a seat right across the table from him, slowly starting to sweat under the fully covering. Oh, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be over there. Hey, she called out, getting his attention. Well, welcome back, Lucia. Malik opened, his eyes glancing to her body before returning to her face. I thought you said you wanted the shirt. Arms stretched out and reclining, Lucia answered back. It was too hot in that thing. Besides, a little midriff never hurt anyone. Malik grinned, causing a strange fluttering sensation in Lucia's chest, one she kept suppressed. You know, I actually have a question I've wanted to ask. Turning off the tablet, Malik corrected his posture, ready to answer. How did you find us? She asked him. Malik, becoming less disconcerted, earnestly answered. Well, as you can easily imagine, the universe is a huge place. He could have gone to any number of worlds to... Wait. Lucia raised her hand, still wrapping her brain around it. Worlds? Like, other than... It clicked in her head. It was as early as his introduction, yet she didn't notice. Her voice went from curious to somber. Are you guys not from Earth? Malik, understanding where this was going, simply nodded. Indeed, the extrasolar settlements of humanity lost contact with Earth a little over 1,500 years ago, he explained, sharing in her mood. When we checked its location on our star maps, there was nothing there. Then, how did you find us? She brought it back to where they were. Malik shrugged and then continued. Well, a woman named Tara came by, explained that she knows where a linen volta is, and asked us to save this woman from his clutches. Lucia raised an eyebrow, seeing Malik smirk. Never suspected that she'd save herself. That doesn't explain why Earth suddenly showed up again, Lucia complained. Well, the current theory is that it was within range of a black hole. It's by no means a solid theory, as Earth wouldn't be able to escape its pool, but other than that, we have no idea why it disappeared. A soft beep rung through the cabin, followed shortly by the pilot's stoic and seemingly cyberized voice. Captain, we are now entering the atmosphere of Polis, he said. Lucia nearly jumped from her seat. What? We're there? Already? Malik, with a shrug, laid out an explanation. Well, a combination of wormhole technology and advanced inertial dampening will give the impression that we never left. Jaws slightly dropped, Lucia got up and ran to the viewing port. Plainly enough, the craft was in motion and descent. Furthermore, she could see where the ground was. White lights surrounded the world outside, lighting up tall and ornate structures that pierced the clouds, luscious hanging gardens, and vast verdant parks. Highways of light ran between the skyscrapers with trails of light flashing by, moving at speeds fast enough to blur their shapes. Then she saw it. Standing out like a beacon, a bright silver tower stood over the skyline. Its central body was a long rod and what looked like a frisbee at the top. Three structures reminiscent of flying buttresses provided support for the tower, each with small, fast-moving craft entering and exiting the structure. Good thing we don't have many earthquakes. Malik's attempt at humor falling on deaf ears as the shuttle moved behind the top of the tower, entering a hangar built inside the structure. The Osprey-like craft landed upon a central runway, its doors hissing as the cabin unpressurized. Waiting for Lucia and the captain was a pair of vanguards, and one more special vanguard between the two with augmented shoulder pads and what looked like a cape extending from his hips. The three of them were marked with dark red plates mixed with the white plates. Greetings, guard captain, Malik addressed the one in the middle. Privet, Captain Abdullah, the guard captain replied with a thick Slavic accent. It's good to see you back. Lucia, having followed Malik, readjusted her tight clothing, attempting to make herself appear as presentable as possible. The captain took a glance at her and immediately averted his eyes. So, this is new guest, da? Malik nodded. Unnerved and sounding slightly unnatural, the captain addressed Lucia. Greetings, I am Captain Dmitri of Planetary Security Corps. Forgive me for bad English, it is third language. But if you need help with navigating facility, I am at your service. Thanks, a pleasure to meet you. The name's Lucia, she introduced herself fluently and confidently. But you can call me Wes for short. Nodding his head, Dmitri moved on to business. Malik, Grand Marshal Victor has been trying to contact you about unauthorized transmission from inside office. He's worried someone hacked your systems. Not to worry. I've already gotten that under control, Malik replied. He thinks it might be new friend. Not Terra. Other friend. Lucia glanced at Malik. The world suddenly felt colder and darker, not helped by the look on Malik's face. The other friend? What does he mean by that? She wondered before feeling something press against her back. It was Malik's hand. He was signaling for her to go on. Well, be sure to inform Victor that anenrophobia isn't exactly welcomed here. He walked past the guard captain, with Lucia following him, and approached the entrance into the building. There is difference between tolerance and stupidity, Dmitri warned. Lucia watched the door close behind them, yet the shadow still lingered. Her stomach felt upset, and Malik's mood hadn't shifted, becoming more gloomy and irritated. Despite this, they continued on. The shuttle was a good indicator of the facility's interior, a soft blue material acting as a carpet in the middle of the clean silver hallway, with the occasional viewing port to either some plant life or out into the world beyond. They went down the arching hallway, coming to its end when they reached the door in front of them and another to their immediate right. Lucia checked back on Malik, whose optimistic radiance seemed to recover. He turned her attention to the door to their right. Here is where you'll be staying, he informed her. Your roommate will be the woman I mentioned earlier, Terra. Lucia glanced at the other door, prepared to ask about it before Malik cut her off. The other door leads into my office, so you know where to find me if you need me. Huh, convenient, Lucia thought to herself. Well, let's see her. The door in front had a handle on the far right side. Next to the door, a panel, one with a slit and some buttons. Malik pressed such a button, sending off a ding-dong. The door opened slightly, enough for the person behind it to be in full view and lean against the frame of the door. She was a rather young-looking woman with a slight tan to her skin and overtly soft and European features. Her eyes were a hazel color, and her long hair an earthly brown. Her face was freckled as well, emphasizing her piercing and precise eyes. And her voice was music to Lucia's ears. Bonjour, Malik. Her eyes darted to Lucia. Guess you finally caught him. Locked behind bars, the captain reported. And I believe we found the woman you mentioned. Lucia blinked, realizing her eyes had wandered to Terra's slender and curvy form. She corrected course immediately, her cheeks blushing red as she spoke. Oh, hey, how's it going? Lucia saw Terra's mouth open slightly, followed by a raising of an eyebrow. Good, she wiped the confused look from her face, replying with a soft smile. Even better knowing that creep's behind bars. Lucia grinned, her voice brimming with pride. Yeah, and you have me to thank for it. Tara's eyes shot up. Wait, you? You're the one who put him down? Malik placed a hand on Lucia's shoulder, and all by herself, too. Tara looked down at herself, and so did Lucia. Tara was dressed in a soft, loose, cream-colored shirt and pale white underwear. Other than that, she had no clothes to speak of. Her cheeks flushed red. Malik, you should have told me sooner. This is no way for me to meet a guest of honor. Chuckling, Malik replied, Don't worry, I'm sure Lucia doesn't mind. Lucia's eyes focused on him, almost snarling. I can speak for myself, she politely stated. Malik, getting the hint, backed off from her. Anyway, I have to go. I've got urgent matters to deal with. Malik dismissed himself. I wish you two the best of luck. Thanks, Lucia replied, watching him leave. She heard the door slide open and pivot her head just in time to see Tara walk inside. Lucia followed her in, taking in the new environment as the door sealed behind her. The room was rather expansive and cozy, containing a fireplace and a bed on either side, two desks and some furniture in front of the fire, with a table between them. There was a unique cabin-like quality to it, almost like they were on some distant mountainside. Tara sat on one of the couches by the fireplace. Lucia, still looking around, opened up with a question. So, Tara, how long have you been here? She answered promptly. A few weeks. Lucia sat next to Tara on the velvety couch. All by yourself? Tara's eyes were on the ground, her hands folded on her lap. She exhaled. Malik's been keeping me company. She turned her sights to Lucia. She could see a slight glimmer in Tara's eyes, one that wasn't present before. And before then? Tara looked away. Lucia saw a slight quiver in her lower lip. Maybe I shouldn't have asked that. Lucia blushed and turned away, giving Tara a moment to recompose herself. When she did, she looked back at Lucia with a smile and a perkiness to her voice. Well, don't be a stranger. What's your name? Lucia, feeling the gloom vanish, answered her. Lucia, was for short. Huh, sounds like a unique and pretty name. Who gave it to you? Malik. A mature, resentful, cyberized voice addressed the captain. The area around him was as hollow and empty as the feeling in Malik's chest as he approached the metal corpse. Around them were brilliant blue pillars of light, with silvery platforms sprinkled around and bridges linking them together. Just ahead of Malik, the Chancellor of the USSR, his younger brother, Harun Rashid. He stood back turned to the captain, and his hands folded behind himself, his color palette matching the facility around them. Malik glanced up, noticing the massive blue glowing spheres ahead. His eyes darted to either side, spotting the gunmetal armored soldiers standing at the ready. If the atmosphere wasn't enough to paralyze Malik, Harun's cold demeanor will. Welcome back, he finished. Malik felt a chill run down his spine. Even when he's nice, Harun had a way of freezing things. Yet, Malik answered, Thank you, Chancellor. Malik heard a mechanical whirl as Harun pivoted his head, looking behind himself before ultimately turning to face Malik. It's good to see you again, he stated, staring into the blazing blue inferno of the T-shaped visor. I'm sure you feel that way, the Chancellor responded neutrally. Now, for our first order of business, the Sapphire Saber. He extended his hand. Gulping, Malik returned the blade to its master, who immediately activated the weapon, the bright blue glowing against his silvery armor. Magnificent, isn't it? He commented, gawking at his plasma blade. Almost as marvelous as your trust in this Enendra, he stated, as he deactivated the saber and returned his attention to an infuriated Malik. He gave us Earth and a phoenix, he snapped. Just because he shares a species with the Dominion, it doesn't mean he agrees with them. Haroon let out an artificial sigh and shook his head. The Argus Dominion seems to think otherwise. Why else would he be using their tech? Let alone be found near several once human inhabited worlds turned smoldering ruins, Earth included, he said, emphasizing the last part. Earth is barren because of a nuclear war, not because of genocide. Malik made a vain attempt to refute his point. Haroon applied a mild amount of skepticism, keeping his tone as neutral as possible. Ever consider that perhaps they dropped the nukes in response to the invasion? Malik became enraged. Enough of these conspiracy theories, he roared. I won't fall back on old and nendrophobic stereotypes and conspiracy theories, Haroon scoffed, almost laughing. This is why I refuse to endorse you. Haroon's words drove into Malik's chest like a knife, knocking the breath out of him. The second someone punches a hole in your narrative, you default to moral grandstanding. Worse yet, you've deluded yourself into thinking you're right to the point of overlooking such a simple counter-argument. Malik, being self-aware for just a moment, felt his chest deflate. All this, and for what? To defend a species who not 4 years ago we fought a war against to secure our right to exist. Now we have these goons running around with the very same weapons and technology used to murder countless billions, and you want us to trust them. Why should we? Malik, eyes twitching and fist clenched, defended his pride. I just told you why. He gave us a phoenix and Earth. Did you check if there were strings attached? Silence fell upon the room. Malik's shocked face reflecting off Haroon's chrome plating. Mark my words. Your easily exploited naivety will put you in a moral quandary that you can't resolve. Malik looked down, realizing his brother's right, and he hated it. Haroon walked past him, his armored boots clattering against the floor as he and his guard left, but not without issuing his final orders. Keep an eye on that Phoenix and make sure she's safe. It's not every day one lands on your Porsche. He left the captain alone in the facility, the clanking sounding like a distant echo as he walked away. Okay, and that is a wrap for chapter 2. Thoughts, opinions, death threats?
Your story sucks. Stop writing. Go away. There.
Yeah, that's the only way to go out dignified.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, much more improved than the last time you did read. It was far more cohesive than last time.
Oh, that's quite a compliment.
It seriously, like, I high praise to you. You improved quite a bit between the two chapters. But do you see what I mean now by, like, when it's more cohesive, it flows a lot better? What I was talking about last time.
Yeah, I definitely am seeing that over here. I was looking at chapter 2. I'm like, yeah, actually, this is the part of the story where things start getting good, which is why somehow I instinctually always got excited to see what people think of chapter 2.
Good.
Sorry, I was just saying I like the dialogue at the end best because there seemed to be more passion there.
Yes.
Agreed.
Because it's supposed to be two grown men arguing about politics. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it provides the reader with some information about what's going on, too. So it does so in a way that's not just expository.
Yeah.
So I would have liked a little more passion earlier on.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was still under the impression, okay, I need to keep my voice quiet so that I don't disturb anyone else in the house.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
But let's see. Any other thoughts maybe about the characters or the world building and whatnot?
Well, we're only in chapter 2, so we still got a long way to go for like to give actual criticism. Like if something's not working.
I'm interested to kind of see like what the like plot is going to be. Like we're getting hints so far of what it is. But so far I'm kind of seeing okay, there's this government organization. There's a like group of women called Phoenixes that are a very prized commodity.
Well, I would be hesitant on using the word commodity, but yeah, they are pretty prized.
To quote John Tron, good.
They're at least like very, very special people that are unique.
Well, excellent. That was actually the impression I was trying to go for, because currently the USR only knows of 2 of them. One of them is Lucia, and the other one will get mentioned in passing in the next chapter. So, yeah, rare is definitely the correct word.
So that's why they're called Phoenixes, presumably.
Somewhat. So that's not the exact reason why. The exact reason why is because they possess insane regenerative powers, as well as having basically pyromancy. Like they can control fire to an incredible extent.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. Any other thoughts, like maybe on Haroon and Malik and how their dynamic?
There's definitely like a feeling of Malik's a guy on like his last ropes. At least like that's what I got out of it. That's what the feeling that I got out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
The like he's he's been like I think he definitely like achieved it in terms of he feels like he's like on his like last leg. This is his desperate attempt to get some favor back.
Yeah. Well, that is pretty good takeaway from that. Yeah.
Alrighty. Didn't really have any thoughts. I do have it up, and I'll be interested to kind of take a look at some of the things because I think that this like has potential. But I maybe like I would kind of like to know like what like the plot it kind of get a better feeling for like what the conflict is going to be.
Right. Would you like for me to just spill it out right now?
You can go for it.
All right. So basically, what's going on right now is that there's a massive intrigue plot going on. So on one level, we have the conflict on Earth, which is going on because humanity's trying to recover, but also dealing with a AI who's become full totalitarian. And on another level, we have the lost colonies that was mentioned in the prologue. Basically, Rosa inadvertently made contact with humans who are thought to have been completely wiped out almost 500 years ago by the time the prologue is taking place. She doesn't know this yet, and she won't realize it until later on. But when she does realize this, she basically tries asking for Angela and the others to try to make contact with them and get their help to basically reclaim Earth. So that way, when the legions, the villains, inevitably do come back, they can mount a proper defense against them and possibly reintegrate Earth into the USR.
Okay.
So there's a lot of room for things to go wrong, both in the actual story for the characters and in my writing of said story.
Okay.
Hopefully, though, it becomes less convoluted as the series goes on. So, yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm interested to see where this goes. This is pretty good so far. At least I think it's so far. Maybe like I think like do some editing on the first chapter, at first couple of things that you've read that we've gone through, and then
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've
Yeah.
already redrafted the first chapter even because I just felt like that was a bit of a disaster.
I don't know if it's like a disaster, but it's
I
definitely
mean,
like
that's
something. I think like it was just like, ooh, this is kind of a little bit rough, but
yeah.
Tonal
disaster
conflict.
disaster would be something like Twilight or Beastly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already currently trying to flesh out some companies that will be creating the technology used within the universe. Like, for example, there's Ascendancy Tech, which Haroon used to be the CEO of before he ran for chancellorship. So, yeah. They're also the guys who created the Vanguard cores, but you'll get more info on those guys as we go on.
Okay.
All right.
Oh no.
Calm down, Becca. Calm down.
No.
Yeah. I need to figure out how to do Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
I'm coverage. Maybe I just need to figure out need to find a way to put a filter up. That's probably the main thing.
You know what's the best part about getting to talk about my little creation with others is that I always get excited because I'm like, ooh, that's right. There's also this over here. There's that, and I took inspiration from this character from this series. I want to weave it all together like this, and it gets me excited to get back to working on it again.
Good.
Good. That means you have passion. Keep that
Yes.
passion up.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Well, I believe it's our resident Bardley Bard.
Yes.
Turn.
All right. So to recap from 2 weeks ago, Aviana and Merrick. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Aviana learned that Merrick's going to be leaving to join the Guardian. So basically, he's been conscripted to become a knight. And as it is his last day in the city, he requested Aviana to come with her to their old orphanage, which had burned down years ago. And he confided some information to her. He told her like why he wants to do what he wants to do. And after paying their respects to the graves in the backyard, they left, and that's where we are today. All right, hold on. Let me just move this a little bit so I can see. Okay. Aviana and Merrick spent the rest of the morning walking around the city, allowing Merrick to take in the place that he had called home one last time. They did this until Merrick's stomach began to growl at around noon. It was then that he led Aviana to a building with a wooden sign hanging from the wall that displayed scattered stars all around it. Unlike the other buildings in the trade district, this one was built out of brick and clay instead of stone. The glass in the windows were also unlike most in the trade district, as they weren't warped and allowed passers-by to a clear view into the tavern. The brighter colors of the material used to build the structure also caused the building to stand out more than any other. The scattered star? Aviana said excitedly, before her excitement was replaced with concern. We can't afford to eat here, Aviana protested as the two of them stood outside the door. Merrick laughed. Don't worry, Captain Harlow gave me some dharma last night. He said it was for helping catch the mugger. Merrick said, grinning as he opened the door and dragged Aviana inside by the arm. The first thing Aviana noticed when they entered was the beautifully crafted purple rug on the floor. It looked as though it had been weaved by a master, with bright yellow threads creating intricate patterns and shapes, along with dark blue and dark red threads weaved into it. She lifted her head from the rug to see that the interior of the tavern was far larger and grander than the one they had eaten at 2 days ago. The wooden floors were also much cleaner than those of the average tavern in the city, with very few crumb and drink stains. Scattered around the area were several lightly colored wooden tables, which were all placed around the dining room. Each table was accompanied by various light brown chairs with backrests seated all around them. All of the furniture looked as though it had been polished and waxed and wouldn't leave splinters if Aviana had adjusted herself while sitting. Straight in front of her, past the tables, was the bar, which had more barrels and kegs lined up against the wall than she could count, and no doubt offered a wide variety of drinks. To her right sat one of the largest fireplaces she had ever seen, made of brick and mortar. The immense roaring fire inside crackled and popped as she noticed the abundant amount of kindling both inside and next to the fireplace. The room was lit by a combination of the sun shining through the clear windows, as well as the fire, giving the dining room a soft orange glow. She also noticed that several unlit braziers sat around the room and candles sitting on the table, no doubt used to keep the tavern lit when it was dark outside. Aviana had never been inside the tavern before. It had always intimidated her, and she never had enough money to come in. Yet now that she was inside, she had never felt so relaxed. Aviana inhaled deeply from her nose when an enticing aroma rubbed against it. It was wonderful, the scent of freshly cooked red meat, seasoned poultry, grilled fish, fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as delectable drinks. It was almost as if the various scents were baked into the room itself. She was enjoying the scent so much, Merrick had to tug on her arm to bring her out of her trance. Once she was awake again, Merrick led her to a table. The two of them took their seats at a table close to the fireplace. Once they were settled, Aviana began to observe the people around her. Many of them appeared to be merchants and more affluent citizens than the average tavern patron. While their clothing wasn't as refined or eye-catching as the nobles, it did appear to be made out of ornate wool in dark blue and crimson colors. She could also see that their buttons were made out of shiny metals such as brass and bronze. Though the people that really caught her eye were a group of stout men who sat at a table closer to the bar. Each one of them was muscular and wearing a simple threaded shirt and pants. They were drinking from their mugs, laughing heartily as they spoke to each other. Strapped to the backrest of their chair were various weapons, clubs, axes, warhammers. One even had a massive sword that was almost taller than the chair. Along with each weapon strapped to the chair, there was a shield to accompany it. She knew these men couldn't be guardians, as their shields did not have the magnolia imprinted on them. Instead, there was a white moth imprinted onto the shield, leading her to guess they must have been mercenaries. So, what are you ordering? What are you thinking of ordering? Merrick asked. Aviana turned away from the mercenaries to look back at Merrick. I don't know. I was thinking maybe just some stew? Aviana replied. Just some stew. We're at the Scattered Star, and you just want some stew. I give you the chance to eat like a noble, and you want to eat like a commoner. Merrick chuckled. Well, if you're insisting, I suppose I could have some wild boar and the finest wine they have. Aviana retorted, grinning. Then how am I supposed to afford my meal? Tarek said indignantly. Don't worry, I've heard that the rations the Guardians get are slightly better than the mush we got while working for Farmer Barr. Merrick's face turned a sickly shade of green as she could see the memory of the horrid food coming back to him. For all the ripe vegetables that man could grow, you'd think he'd be able to make something out of it. The two laughed at the memory as a female server approached them. She was an average-looking woman with long brown hair, but she had a warm and welcoming smile. Good afternoon. How may I serve you today? She asked, her voice soft and pleasant. Yes, I'll have some venison with red wine, please, Merrick requested, looking towards the server with a smile. And for you, dear? She asked, turning towards Aviana. Oh, can I have some roast chicken with some mulberry to drink? Very well, that'll be 20 dama, the server stated. Aviana's jaw nearly hit the floor. She had spent less than that to get a room and a meal at the last place they ate at. Yet she watched as Merrick dug his hand into his pants pocket and pulled out a large stack of golden coins. He counted them before handing them over to the server. I believe this should cover it. The server counted the coins in her hand and nodded, bowing. Very good, my lord, the server stated before walking away. Aviana and Merrick sat in silence as they relaxed, enjoying the comfort of the fire. While reclining in her chair, Aviana did her best to listen to what the mercenaries were talking about. She wasn't able to hear the entire conversation, but she did manage to pick up a few words. From what she gathered, the mercenaries had just been paid for doing a job in a hamlet called Brighton. According to this story, there was a horde of banelings that had taken up residence within the forest around the hamlet. She had never seen a banelings alive before, only the occasional dead one that fur traders would sell to the bazaar. They were some kind of rabbit that was far more vicious than any normal rabbit. The dead ones she had seen were as tall as an adult man, and she heard could get as heavy as 3. It wasn't out of the ordinary for some towns to have the occasional wild animal destroying their crops or terrorizing villages. Thankfully, Tyrion had the wall surrounding the wards, as well as an outer wall protecting the farms and fields just beyond them. The mercenaries' conversation began to shift to more mundane matters such as payments and weapon maintenance, and it was then that she grew bored and began to stare at the fire. The popping and cracking sounds of the wood splitting were very comforting in a way, and helped her to forget about her experience this morning in the orphanage. The irony of fire helping her relax was not lost on her, as she closed her eyes and reclined against the chair's backrest. She was so relaxed she almost didn't hear Merrick calling her name. Aviana, Merrick called her. Huh, what? She said, opening her eyes and seeing that the food had been placed in front of her along with her drink. A brown roasted chicken leg and thigh decorated with parsley and pepper sat in front of her on a wooden plate. Steam was coming off the cooked chicken, as well as several bits of sliced potatoes next to it. Without hesitating, she picked up the leg and tore it from the thigh and brought it to her mouth. The taste of parsley and garlic and salt hit her tongue all at once as she bit in. As her teeth sunk in, she moaned in delight as the juices from the chicken dripped up from the limb and onto her wooden plate. Even though the heat from the poultry burned her tongue and her mouth, she didn't want to let go. The taste was so bitter yet delicious. Ignoring the burning pain, she quickly chewed the scalding meat and swallowed, only to drop this chicken on her plate and grab her mug of mulberry juice. She dumped the liquid into her mouth, taking as big of a drink as even the heaviest drunkard. The taste of sweet white grapes doused the heat in her mouth and soothed her pain. She heard Merrick snicker as he took a piece of his bleeding red venison in his hand and placed it in his mouth. With table manners like that, it's no wonder you haven't been able to find any work, he said, still chewing. Says the barbarian, talking with his mouth full, Aviana retorted with a smile. She picked up her chicken leg again and took another bite, ignoring the blistering heat in her mouth. She didn't realize how hungry she was, but each mouthful of food made her realize just how little she had eaten the day before. Mind if I have a bite of that? I'll let you have some of my venison for it, Merrick offered. Aviana almost shook her head. She wanted to keep the meal to herself. It was doubtful that she would have anything this delicious again for a while. Then she realized how unlikely it was she would ever have venison again. She nodded and pulled off a generous piece of chicken and skin, the heat scalding her fingers as she placed it on Merrick's plate. Merrick then tore a piece of his venison from his plate and with his fingers and placed it onto hers. She picked up the venison with her hand and watched it bleed onto her plate. She then brought it to her mouth and began to chew. It was gamier than other meat she had tried, and the texture was also a bit chewier than others. Yet the gaminess mixed with the salt and rosemary it was cooked in gave it a very unique flavor. She took a look at Merrick as he chewed the chicken and noticed that he seemed to be just as delighted with it as she had been. When she had finished, all that was left on Aviana's plate was discarded chicken bones and sprinklings of seasoning. She was almost tempted to lick the plate clean just so she could savor the flavor for a little longer, but decided against it. Now that was refreshing, Merrick said, emphasizing the last word as he reclined into his wooden chair, picking his teeth with his fingernail. Aviana reclined in her seat as well. Between the delicious meal, the warm sound of the crackling fire the warm sound of crackling fire from nearby, the comforting atmosphere, Aviana just wanted to close her eyes and nap. I kind of want to have a home like this someday, Aviana said, staring at the ceiling and the arches that supported it. You mean live in a tavern? Merrick responded, sounding slightly confused. No, I mean, I want to have a place I can feel happy, she said, sounding somewhat whimsical. Aviana lowered her head just in time to watch Merrick's turn, trying to hide the uncomfortable look on his face. I know what you're going to say, Merrick, but you'll see. When you come back from Karen, I'll have made something of myself, name or no name, she said quietly, not really believing the words herself. Merrick sighed and turned his gaze back towards her, looking deep into her eyes. Aviana, I'm not going to be here to help you after today. So please, I'm begging you, swallow your pride and just get a job, even if you think it's beneath you. You are the closest thing to family I have. Merrick stopped for a moment as though contemplating something. You are all I have left of either family. If I were to come back and find out you weren't here or something bad had happened to you, I don't know what I'd do, Merrick said, his voice shaking, his body trembling with every word. Aviana didn't know what to say. She sat in her chair, silently contemplating the request he had made. His words had made her feel warmer and happier than any fire or shelter she had ever experienced. She always knew he cared. He wouldn't have kept her safe if he didn't. Yet she never knew the way he truly felt, and was honored she was considered to be part of his family. Yet what he was requesting hurt her as well. He wanted her to live the existence all Civets were destined for, a life where they were only lived to serve others with no rank, title, status, or even a name, and almost no hope of leaving once they had entered that kind of life. Yet a part of her knew he was right. What choice did she have? She rubbed her hand against her cloak as the warm feeling she had evaporated. She continued rubbing the cloak until she felt an odd silver coin in her pocket. Felt the odd silver coin in her pocket rub against her fingers. It was then she found her response. I'm sorry, Merrick. I can't promise you that. I know that it's not likely I'll ever have the life I want, but I promise I will do whatever it takes to be here when you come back. I will work as hard as I can to become something you, Matron Alessia, and the others would have been proud of, she said, looking him in the eye. Merrick sighed and shook his head. Just once, I wish you'd listen to reason. Fine, but remember, you promised that you'd be here when I return, and I intend to hold you to that. It's a deal then, Aviana replied with a soft smile. And that's it for this week.
I really like that. That was great.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I feel like you were putting. I feel like there's some self-reflection with the whole "eat like a commoner" part.
Yes, like that bit of her there. It really. I didn't need any context for anything else.
Hold on one second.
Oh dear.
What?
He had to answer a call of duty or something.
Oh, okay.
Is he a parent?
Probably roommate of some sort.
Sorry, my sister came in and decided to raise all hell.
Well, okay. I'm guessing you put in a bit of yourself with the whole commoner part.
No. That was just them having how to describe this. That was the commoner line, like, I give you the chance to eat like a noble and you eat like a commoner. No, that was just kind of to show Aviana's personality. She's very
yes, but the way you said it.
Yeah.
The way you said it, that sounded like
delivery. He's talking about the delivery.
Okay. Yeah. The delivery was me just going like, I take you out to a fancy restaurant and all you want to have is bread?
Yeah. That was why I like that a bit so much, because I low-key was actually giggling when I heard that, because it was funny. Like, the contrast was hilarious.
In that moment, I was like, that's not Merrick saying it, that's him. That's him saying it to that character.
Yes.
No, damn it, this is the direction I want you to go in, God! But what, in all seriousness, like, Any thoughts? Any I agree with Becca. It got kind of somewhat sloppy with her playing with her pocket. That was my fault. But any other thoughts, on the characters, on the setting, anything?
Food description was good. I'm hungry now. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't need to know what the scattered star thing was from before. It's just the way that Aviana expressed her excitement and glee. Just gave me the idea. Oh, so this is a really important and very fancy place, very high class stuff over here.
They have a rug. It was literally a gift from this world's version of Persia because the ambassador who went there enjoyed it so much.
Damn.
Yeah, the characters and the descriptions are all excellent. There were a couple of word choice things. There was one where weaved. I'm sorry. I'm talking, Lord Commander Chef, if you don't mind. Weaved, I think would be woven would be better. Woven by a master.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point. Yeah.
And the inhaled with her nose sounds a little odd. Maybe just inhaled.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
Yeah, those are just small things. Those are just really small things.
Yeah.
Picayune, very Picayune things.
What about? That's fine. I appreciate that. What about you, Dunn? You sound like you want to say something.
It was just one little word choice. I think whimsical is kind of was an odd description. I think the wistful.
Okay, that would have been better. I just chose whimsical because that was the first word I could come up with. But I agree with you. Wistful is a much better word for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like wistful. Wistful's good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. It's whimsical. Usually, when you're in somebody's POV, I have never ever heard somebody say this, use the adjective whimsically when it's them
wistful,
talking. Yeah, since whimsical. Yeah, it's just the whimsical is kind of just that's usually either somebody's trying to sound whimsical or they sound whimsical to somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Wistful is much better. Again, that was just something it was just the only word I could think of at the time, but I'll keep that in mind when I'm going back to edit. But yeah, I'm glad you all liked it though. I appreciate the criticisms, and I hope you are all hungry now, because according to Becca, that is the only thing I'm really good at.
Well, it is lunchtime.
I do want to have my sandwich now because of you. Thanks for that.
I feel like getting myself a big sandwich from Togo's, honestly.
And to be clear, I am the pickiest fucking eater who does not enjoy most foods, and you still made me hungry.
You are in a good boat with me. I don't like most food.
Yes!
I am exceptionally picky about my food. My parents despaired of me.
Eating is boring.
They're just, they were like, how are you going to eat anything on your mission when you go to Russia or Finland or Europe? I ain't going there. I'm probably going English speaking. And speak of the devil, I did go English speaking to White Bread, Kansas with normal food.
No. I thought your parents were telling you essentially, there's no food doesn't exist outside of the United States. Everyone else is starving.
Oh my God.
Also, to clarify,
my parents still dread me. They always wonder how the hell I live.
To clarify something real quick, to Becca's point, that she's right. I'm not only just good at food descriptions; it's one of the things I'm good at.
You just reminded me.
You're George R. R. Martin 2.0.
Which is funny. I've never read his stuff.
You just reminded me of Weird Al Yankovic. Don't you know that other kids are starving in Japan?
They're starving in Africa. They're starving in Japan. Fucking hell, the Asians think we're starving here.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, that was very good. Love the emotion.
Thank you.
Yes. I mean, all those points are really Picayune that I raised earlier.
That's fine. I knew it was going to need some word choice improvement. This will need another find. I'm going to hire an actual editor when this is all done, for word choice.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking about it myself right now, considering I keep stuttering over my own writing, so...
Just
yeah.
hire an editor, so simple.
Or it could just be that, Or it could just be that my brain isn't very good at reading aloud.
I've got a problem with a monotone, and slightly deep voice, but I try to overcome it as best I can.
Yes. I like how you guys seem to have put in a lot more attention to Tarek's thing.
Yeah.
Which, ironically enough, I also did. I was like, well, I must hear this. I must see what Tarek has written.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple.
So is this the child kidnapping? You mentioned that last time.
Child kidnapping. No, I already did that one. I did that one last week.
Oh, I see. Never mind then. Continue.
So, well, kind of like the book should be. I'm hoping to have it come out either August or Christmas. I'm debating whether or not the best option would be, since gonna get that Christmas present as soon, though I imagine that I'll be competing with a few bigger authors like Mr. Abercrombie, Lord Grimdark himself.
Well, if you're doing it in August, you're also competing with Skyward 3.
Oh, that's coming out this year? Oh crap. I haven't paid attention to the Skyward books. I listened to one and I was just like, okay, this is a nice formulaic sports movie format. Okay.
Yep.
It's Brandon having a bit of fun. It's nice, but it's just like I could predict nearly every beat that happened in the story.
Yeah. It's not necessarily his best work, but a lot of people enjoy it, so you're gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, we're probably going to get some free audiobooks around that time since I live next to his office manager.
Ew.
Yeah, we got like 7 or 8 free audiobooks that per person that week, or count that a week. It was nice. Okay, so this week, I'm actually kind of just going to be reading this kind of to get some like feedback. So please don't be nice to me. That's fine.
Dragon blasters.
Got ya.
We'll interrupt you throughout the entire thing.
It's not Dragon Blasters.
I already hate it.
Yes, it's raw. Sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the word dragon in it. It's already worse.
Oh, it's called Skyfire. That's the title. So yes, I have to. But this was actually something. So I actually did not watch Civil War in the theater. I missed it.
Wait, what? Captain America: Civil War.
Yep,
you missed out on something,
bud. But you've watched it, right?
I have watched it.
Okay, good.
But I have watched it, but I didn't get to watch it in the theater because I was off on a mission for 2 years.
That is fine, as long as you watch it.
And so I was bored on my mission. So what I did was I just would write on my days off. And one of them I wrote was, well, I kind of want to write, like, see if I can, like, kind of write a Civil War-esque story of superheroes fighting each other. That might be interesting. So I hadn't seen it. And thankfully, like, there are no bearings on the plot of Civil War, either the comic or the thing. So at least the movie, since the movie's radically different. I did know about the comic though, and I knew it was coming out. So I just decided to write it. And I decided to kind of name a few of the characters after people in my mission, just as kind of like, hey. So, alrighty. Skyfire, Entry 1. The flashing cameras caused Mitch to blink and close his eyes for a moment. He tapped the sensor in his palm in the prescribed pattern. The small tube in his arm secreted a small dose of medication into a vein in his right arm. He didn't want an epileptic seizure in the middle of a press conference. He put his hand on the stand and looked out at the conference. As of right now, Large numbers of metahumans have begun to come out of the woodwork and are now actively resisting the rehabilitation and training efforts that we are putting into place. He adjusted his sleeves. Currently, most of the Western units are controlled by Meta America. His mouth twisted slightly at having to actually say that name. According to my recon agents, there has been a dramatic increase in their numbers. One reporter raised her hand. Have there been any breakthroughs in terms of either curing or causing a recession in the metahuman virus without the use of the control chips? Mitch rolled his eyes. The metahuman tendency or probability of developing metahuman powers is not a virus. Neither is it just a recessive gene that has come into effect. He emphasized the word tendency firmly. It is a combination of a number of things. Many of the variables have not yet been isolated yet. No, in actuality, we have discovered that in order to cure a metahuman, for lack of a better term, we would have to create some sort of medication that would completely deconstruct and rework their genetic code and molecular structure. And once that has been completed, we would have to recreate the deconstructed without one of the alternate amino acid that is causing the change. Is there any way to prevent the tendency? Another reporter, a large man with a big mustache, asked. There is no way of preventing the tendency. Mitch was already tired of this, but he still had to endure it for another 45 minutes. If we were to attempt such a thing, we would have to inject babies with carefully crafted anti-metahuman drugs from birth and continue that practice throughout their lives. He looked around scathingly. I don't know about you, but I would prefer not to subject infants to that sort of procedure. The room was silent for a moment, but only for a moment. More questions ensued, some of no consequence that he could simply BS his way through. Others required a slightly lengthier explanation in order to satisfy the vultures around him. This was the main thing he hated about his job. He had to restrain himself from tapping his palms several times throughout the conference. One, because it would look like a nervous tic, and two, he didn't want to pass out from an overdose. Once it was through, though, he got out as quick as he could, not wanting to stick around for the public to gawk at. The flashing lights outside caused another bout of medication being poured into his system. It was that or fall down convulsing like a landed fish. Mitch quickly made his way to his car, then leaped inside as quickly as he could. He groaned as he pushed back in a plush seat, feeling exhausted. He could feel the stress building inside him. He needed to get back home and ride a bike or some other activity to get his heart pumping. Cardio always helped him cool down. Or he needed to spend time with Pam. Gritting his teeth, he pulled up his sleeve, revealing the brace attached to his arm. He carefully detached the brace from his arm, winced once, then felt the relief of the needle at the end leaving his skin. He grunted and unstrapped the sensor on his palm, carefully setting it in a small case to his side. Where to, Director McCusion? Clyde, his personal chauffeur, asked. One moment. Mitch tapped his communicator on his arm, then quickly typed out a text to his wife. Hey, Pam, where you at? The return text is immediate. I'm at the office, working off a little bit of stress after finishing up stuff at work. Are you doing okay? I almost had a seizure over there, Mitch responded. Pam immediately shot back. I'm in the fight room. I'm pretty sweaty. Do you want me to meet you outside after I take a shower and we can go home together? Mitch texted back. I can't wait that long. Besides, your sweat is one of my base aphrodisiacs. Ha 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 ha, the text came back. Mitch smiled. Pam understood what he was talking about, though. Where do you want to meet? I'll meet you at the fight room. I can get there in 15 minutes. Pam, sweet, dependable Pam texted back. I will be ready for you when you get back here. I need to get to the office. Mitch pulled down his sleeve. I have a lot of stress to work off. Clyde nodded wordlessly and gunned the accelerator. The lights of the recently rebuilt New Jersey were only a little bit brighter than the stars in the sky, which Mitch was grateful for. His medication was enough to keep him from having a seizure, but he preferred being as independent from the drugs as he could. The tall buildings were all reinforced steel, though they still had the appearance of the old skyscrapers, just less glass. The office was in reality his research/rehabilitation/training facility. Bloody. The main focus was creating weapons to subdue metahumans, not kill them, just subdue them. There were people as well, just people with supernatural abilities that aided chemical imbalances in their brain. Most of his staff were metahumans, but they had been providing with the necessary technology requisite to maintain their sanity. Mitch fingered the scar on the back of his neck where his own chip was housed. It still hurt sometimes. It hadn't been put in with a whole lot of skill, but it did the job fine. Mitch rubbed his eyes, then put on his shades as he exited the car, black suit and red tie immaculate. Clyde locked the door and quickly followed him, the large, dark-skinned bodyguard moving like a man mountain. Mitch entered the office, or more accurately, his domain, the slight skip in his step. Being at press conferences drained his vitality just based on how much medication he had to pump through his system. But being here, where he could work in a controlled environment and actually do something productive, that invigorated him. The door guard nodded to him and motioned toward the security scanner. Mitch couldn't help but run his eyes over his creation with no small amount of satisfaction. It was a massive circular hallway leading into the building, the only entryway into the high-tech facility. One of the problems early on had been the fear that some metahumans could make themselves appear like other people, even down to selling or makeup. However, what they had realized that there was one thing that couldn't be imitated perfectly: someone's gait and posture. So, Mitch had designed and created a large circular device that would scan the person as he walked toward the next area of clearance, and if the two gaits and posture did not match with who was being put into the scanner, a pair of tasers would activate from the sides of the hallway and temporarily paralyze the person attempting to gain access to the lab. Mitch casually walked through the detector, almost feeling the sensors examining him as he moved to the door. Every other part of the structure was reinforced titanium. Even the most powerful metahumans were incapable of breaking into it. Mitch should know he had it thoroughly tested against the strongest metahumans that had been rehabilitated. Nobody had been able to break it. The interior of the hub, as he liked to think of it, was more like a beehive rather than a regular building with several floors. Instead, the hub was honeycombed with offices and labs, at least in the upper offices. Everything was open. Each of the people working in the facility had their own lab, clearly visible from the ground, and at least up until they got to the 5th or 6th floor, then it became impossible to see them from the ground. Just as he was getting onto escalator stairs to get to the second floor, on the 5th floor, something blew up, sending a shower of glass downward for a brief second. In reaction to the falling glass, the defense lasers popped out of the walls and disintegrated them with a series of quick shots. Mitch started briefly at the sudden explosion, then he rolled his eyes. Ben Buck was playing with explosives again. Mitch pulled his phone out of his pocket and placed it in his ear. "Call Burning Ben," he ordered. Immediately, he heard the sound of sprinklers going off. "Hey, Mitch," Ben remarked sheepishly, coughing slightly. This looks kind of bad, but it's not as bad as the last time, at least." "This is the 6th time this week," Mitch remarked. "It's a very good thing you're impervious to heat." Ben chuckled nervously. "Yeah, but not smoke inhalation." The statement was punctuated by a series of coughs. Mitch rolled his eyes. "Get cleaned up quickly and move on to another way of creating explosives that can incapacitate nearly invincible metahumans. And go to the basement where there are actual bunkers for this sort of thing." Ben coughed again. "All right, Mitch, I'll get it done." Before Mitch could hang up the pyrotechnic muttered, "I hate the basement." Mitch sighed, then tapped his earpiece once. The connection was immediately cut off. He touched the earpiece again. Call Mike Smithy. The dial began to ring briefly, and then Mike's high-pitched voice came over the phone. Hey, Mitch, what's up? I need a quick update on the Metatron project. Mitch kept his voice neutral even as his fingers twitched with eagerness. We haven't yet succeeded in transferring a human consciousness into a robotic brain, Mike responded apologetically. Last time we did it, you weren't there, so it's kind of a fluke, and we haven't yet figured out what exactly happened to do it. Mitch sighed in frustration. They had been working on this for nearly a year, but it wasn't working. At least the one time it had, nobody had been in the lab, and the security feeds had blacked out. And the next thing he knew, there was a robotic mouse roaming around the cage and a dead mouse with no marks on it other than on it in another cage. It made very little sense. The one time they had had success, they couldn't replicate it. Mitch breathed out slowly. Just keep trying to figure it out. I'll come in and see if I can restore the tapes and get a better idea of what happened that night. When would that be? Mike asked. Probably Monday. Just get everything ready for me over the next 3 days. Mitch responded calmly. On it, Director. Mitch could almost see the technology coordinator saluting smartly. He smiled at the thought. The gym wasn't a regular area for recreation and exercise after work. It was also a combat practice yard. As he entered, the sounds of laser fire were immediately apparent from the range. However, what his attention was on were the two people in the specially enclosed fighting ring. Or at least that was what it would look like to anyone who had not really seen anything specifically designed for metahuman combat. It was specially enclosed by reinforced glass just in case fireballs or some equally destructive metahuman ability were put into play. The glass container designed for the purpose wasn't up at the time, but it could be raised at any point depending on which of the rehabilitated metahumans were in the ring. Steve Thane, a very large guy with big white teeth and a somewhat lopsided expression, stood on one side of the ring. At the moment, his skin had a silver metallic coating, his personal metahuman power. Several metahumans had the ability to make their skin invulnerable, but Steve was the only one who could make his skin metal, at least that Mitch was aware of. His opponent was a very large rock man with a British accent. Mitch knew this because he had been the one who had rehabilitated Brock Sampson. Also, he was yelling several obscenities that would have not been allowed by any mother in any house. They crashed together, the metal not even making much of a dent in the rocks despite the density of the metal. Brock took more of a boxing approach with several rapid punches coupled with quick footwork, while Steve was more of a kickboxing style, going in fast with a series of punches, then kicking at his opponent while he was distracted by the vicious punches. Mitch watched silently for a moment, then walked toward the gym area where his wife was beating the living snot out of a large, specially designed punching bag. With one blow, Pam slammed a particularly vicious punch into the bag, causing the rope upholding the bag to snap. The bag threw backward, crashing into the ground and ending up a cloud of dust. Pam quickly unwrapped the exercise tape from around her hands and tugged on a t-shirt over her exercise bra. She had her long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her shirt and sweaty pants hugging her well-muscled form. She had been working as an MMA fighter before knowledge of her metahuman abilities had cut her career short. Hey, sweetheart, she said, high-pitched voice, very comforting. How are you? Mitch let out a sigh. Kinda drugged up and pretty stressed out, but other than that, I'm fine. She quickly walked over to him and pulled him into a tight embrace. She was a lot stronger than he was. Made sense. Most people were. Also, she was one of the strongest metahumans he knew. He was one of the weakest people physically that he knew. She wasn't as strong as she could be if she got mad and turned into an enormous green woman, but she was pretty strong even without that. She was right. She did smell like sweat. But he liked the smell of her sweat. It showed you she worked hard. That was one of the main things he appreciated about her. He always felt like a bit of a child when he got a hug from his wife, mostly because he was several inches shorter than she was, and she was half again as muscular as he was. He hugged her back, his stress slowly dissipating as if it were being washed away by the hand of a gentle giant. Pam held him tight, not too tight. She knew how frail his body was compared to hers. Mitch wasn't sure if anything could kill Pam short of a nuclear bomb going off on her head. "It's okay," she whispered. "What do you need from me?" He got up on tiptoes and whispered a couple things on her ear. Pam pursed her lips. "Okay, I can't say we've done that before, but I'm interested to try." Mitch leaned his head against her shoulder, not caring how ridiculous he looked. "Thank you so much," he whispered. She gave him a quick squeeze. And that's it.
Okay, I gotta ask. Did you ever watch Venture Brothers?
No, I did not watch.
Because one of the characters is named Brock Sampson, and the thing about that is he is this monster of a man, like the ultimate badass and everything. So I was like, is Don a Venture Brothers fan?
I think Brock Sampson is also a character in Marvel, as far as I remember.
I don't know. I would have to look that up. I'm not too sure on that. All I know is that he's a very famous
Doc Samson.
It's Doc Samson, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just funny you come up with like one of the best super badasses in like animated television.
I mean, to be fair though, I named one of my characters Naomi Watson, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds like the name of a famous actress." I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness it is an actress. It's the name of the famous actress."
Naomi Watts, I think.
Yeah, that's actually also not her real name, either.
Oh.
But
no, I didn't know
that. Yeah, I mean the character that I wrote, that's actually not her real name. I know.
I assume that's for the bomb going off in the middle of a workplace environment.
I have to admit, I do agree with Becca though. Like this was really snappy. Like good job on you. Good on you, man.
Thank you. I think I wrote this like mid 2018. Not mid 2018.
It would have to be 17.
Mid 2017. The weirdo laugh. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, this was kind of just like I just wanted to like I was kind of bummed about missing Civil War, so this was my way of coping.
Well, good job, man.
Good job,
yeah. Any thoughts, like feedback? It seems as though people like the dynamic between Pam and Mitch.
That was nice.
I actually really liked the bit at the beginning where he's like he's just dealing with the bureaucracy and he's just frustrated. He's just done with them.
Yeah. He was a little distracted at the beginning for some reason.
I thought the beginning was fine. Like it is just a press conference, and I was kind of like, all right, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it though.
Yeah, I just thought that would be kind of the best way of like kind of like quickly getting some exposition out of the way without like having a like cliched like Men in Black or Hellboy type situation where it's like, here is the setup for the world to you person who doesn't really know how it works.
Right. It was a clever way, especially given what it's supposed to be. So again, like I'd have to hear more to give some solid criticism, but so far, yeah. Like what you're putting, I like what you are putting down, my brother.
We'll see what happens later.
Yeah, I'll have to.
I'm sorry. If you don't mind, I actually need to leave right now.
Okay.
That's
cool.
it's around time to get going.
Yeah,
sorry for leaving on such short notice.
Well, no worries. We're finished now as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I guess I'll just be the first one out.
Alrighty.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you very much for your feedback and for listening. And have a good day to everyone. Still.
Have a nice rest of your
You
day.
too, mate.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. So good news. So somebody I did tag them, but I put out the tweet of they smuggled explosives into Morocco in order to get the shot, and somebody tweeted, "What the actual F?"
Oh, I have to look at this now. Luckily,
Yeah.
I have your Twitter open already. It's my.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm glad that you guys liked it. Maybe I'll start. This was kind of just a testing the waters thing to see if
Yeah, it seemed enjoyable.
Yeah, it was solid.
Yep. I'll have to work on it some more, kind of actually finish it, because I only got I don't know, 30 pages in. I can't remember how far I got. But I did know that I had I really have no idea what I'm going to so you know that part, the meme of explosives into Morocco, I just tweeted that one out finally, and just what the actual crap was the reaction. So I'm hoping that it'll catch on somewhat, because that part is arguably the worst felony that they committed.
Yeah, it's a literal arms transaction at that point. They brought it was an illegal arms deal.
Yeah. Well, next week we will be doing we'll actually be joined by and Balerion died. Okay. Cool. Well, we will be working on the next chapter of Fire Can't Kill a Dragon, and we'll be bringing a couple of new guests, new faces. Zach Reeds of Zach Reeds, and
I know
Becca,
him. Good guy.
And Becca to be on this next one. And so that's going to be fun. I'm excited. Well, I got to run up to Smudcast, but I also need to grab some lunch. I will see you guys later. Bye.
Have a nice weekend.